before. Our next panelist of the day is Ramesh Menon. Ramesh is a published author, journalist, documentary filmmaker, and corporate trainer. He has 41 years of media experience with newspapers, television channels, and the new media. Our next panelist of the day is the very young and talented Ambika Singh, who works with NDTV. She has worked extensively in covering water and sanitation issues in India. Our last panelist, but not the least, is Amit Arora. He is a journalist, newsreader, anchor, radio jockey, quiz master, and a commentator with over 15 years of experience with Doordarshan and All India Radio. With this, may I now hand over to the moderator, Mr. Tiwari.
Good afternoon. We heard in morning session that sanitation economy is big business. But with that, the sad part is that our own community, media, has not been promoting sanitation in the way it could have been. So the basic idea of discussing this whole aspect in this session is that what could be the ways, 2 or 3 ways specifically, which could be takeaways for all those who are present here, for basically promoting sanitation and sanitation-related issues in media. One good thing which we saw while judging the entries which came for our media awards was that regional media is quite active in terms of promoting sanitation. So 2 of the entries which came to us while judging came from Tamil Nadu, one of the smaller cities, and the second one was from Pune or Maharashtra city. And those 2 were the ones which could be leading lights in terms of how media can be promoting sanitation or sanitation related businesses, or probably awareness about sanitation. We have, I'm delighted that I have my senior colleagues here, some of whom I have worked in the past also, and they are the best people to tell all of you how or what media can do to promote sanitation. So without wasting time, let us begin with Kaveri. Kaveri, you have worked in India Today, and as far as we know, that for India Today, while whether it is television or whether it is newspaper or whether it is in the magazine section, if you come up with a story which is basically focused on sanitation, realistically, it would be very hard to sell to the editor. So I would like to understand, with your kind of experience, what needs to be done, to just bring in that kind of awareness or bring in that kind of a thought process, where sanitation could be taken beyond TRP business. So what we would do is initially, we could speak about 3 minutes on 3 or 4 key points, which could be done by media to ensure that awareness and coverage of sanitation related issues in media improves. So please.
I'm glad you talked about TRP business to begin with, because this was one of the challenges that we had when we launched the Safai Giri Awards in Singathon for Aaj Tak, but it was a group-wide initiative. And the magazine and the newspaper and the digital site and the television networks were as involved. And our challenge really was, how do you make a subject like sanitation and a subject like Safai attractive to audiences? And we thought that we were very bright, and we came up with this idea of a day-long Singathon. And during the Singathon, we also recognized people who had done excellent work in the field of sanitation. And over a period of time, thanks to also people like Naina Lal Kidwai, we kept changing the categories and kept updating ourselves with the challenges in the field. So if you notice, the first year that we did it was 2015, and our categories were very basic, they were garbage guru and toilet titan and things like that. And over the years, we realized that really ODF plus was the big challenge, and we moved towards that. So I think one thing that we established was that with the right kind of initiative and the right kind of thinking, and we are not alone. NDTV also did this before us, I have to say, although we were much cleverer and we did the awards, which I thought was a very good initiative. So I think we proved that good news about sanitation and creating awareness about real heroes in this area could be good business as well. And we got very good ratings for the event that we did, and it created wonderful content as well, which we continued to play over a period of time. The challenge, of course, is now. Now, 4 years on, which I presume the organization, which I'm no longer with, but I know that that is the big challenge that they will face. How do we innovate and how do we, recreate this model and make it more attractive to sponsors, to advertisers, to people associated with the sanitation, people who are associated with the coalition. That's one. The second challenge we found was that there was no problem in selling these stories, so to speak, as you said. There's a huge appetite, I feel, for, for people who are doing good work, contrary to what we think. The media is not completely obsessed with elections all the time, whether it's assembly or municipal or general elections as we have now. We do like to do stories that go beyond the obvious. And if you've noticed over a period of time, not just India Today, other magazines too, they do a lot of special issues on a lot of interesting and real issues. So I think our challenge was that how do we take this beyond that one big event, one big bang event that we do every year, and we chose October 2nd, obviously, to do it. So how do you sustain that, and how do you make it a continuous process? How do you keep up the awareness about these great people who are doing interesting work? And as I said, there was a huge appetite for real heroes. I think we've established that we created, or at least I wouldn't say created, we recognized people like Afroz Khan, we recognized people like Temsula Imsong, we recognized a whole lot of people who I think are doing exceptional work. We recognized institutions, we recognized municipal corporations. This gentleman here was talking about municipal corporations. We recognized the Pune Municipal Corporation in our first award, and I think they were doing exceptional work which we were actually not familiar with, which is of course, a tragedy. But so the second challenge I think we face is how do you sustain something like that, not just over that one big bang event, but over a period of time. And we were not really able to solve that. And I think for that we need, because it's television, because time costs money, we need the support of people who can underwrite that time, even for an organization like India Today, which I think is quite aware as citizens. And I think the third big problem that we have is that we were unable, and I think that exists in all the beats that are covered these days, we were unable to look at sanitation as part of the whole urbanization issue. We tended to look at it as, okay, so these are the number of toilets that are being created here. These are the, these are the number of toilets. This is the ODF target. These are the, waste to wealth gurus. These are the people who are creating, we had a winner once who, had a technology where he could actually make roads out of recycled plastic. So things like that. So how do you make sanitation part of a beat, and not just a beat, but part of the whole urbanization debate? And that is, I think, a challenge that we have not been able to resolve, because also, if you've noticed, and I'm sure you have, that less attractive, less glamorous areas like education and health are getting less and less coverage. So if we are somehow able to crack this and understand that sanitation is part of the whole urbanization debate, and absolutely vital for us, because if we are in cities where we cannot breathe, where we cannot live, where we cannot function, I mean, what is progress. So I think that is something that we have to understand, that urbanization needs to be a complete beat by itself. You need to educate yourselves. Before we educate others, we need to educate ourselves. And that is something that I think as editors, hopefully people will understand, and they will emphasize, not just in the digital space, but also print and television, and understand that this is just one of the areas that needs to be covered. And if we have leaders in the civic space, we need to highlight them and we need to focus on them. So those are the three big issues that I felt that we encountered over the 4 years that we did the Safai Giri initiative.
And Safai Giri was a very good initiative of TV Today. But, Kaveri, you have outlined the issues on the ground and the problems and the challenges which journalists face on a day-to-day basis, be it reporters or be it the editors, both of them are on the same line. One is deciding and one is filing stories. But thanks to, government initiative and also government's stress on developmental issues and sanitation issues in the last few years, at least, this issue has come in the mainstream. And it has become a lot easier, to focus on these issues if you, as you said, that if you find out good leaders, good examples, and also good, things which are happening around to focus upon. So that way it becomes much easier. Ramesh, you have been looking at this whole issue for quite some time, it would be 4 decades, I believe. Do you see a change, as I see it, that we are now, as media, more receptive or are moving towards being more receptive to sanitation issues? For 2 reasons, I would say. One is that sanitation is big business, as I mentioned, and Secretary also mentioned, Secretary Sanitation mentioned in the morning session that, it would be $60 billion. Indian sanitation business or the market would be $60 billion. So A, for media also, it's an opportunity to look at this business, and B, because the government is also moving towards sanitation and these kind of issues in a big way in the last few years, for media it should be much easier than earlier to focus on sanitation and other issues.
I would largely tend to agree with you. After 41 years in journalism, I'm quite sure of the fact that, the media would do things where there is money. We can't run away from that. If they do award functions, it is because award functions bring them more money than the subscription. The magazine or the newspaper doesn't bring in money. It's functions, events which bring in money.
Less money than the events.
And money pays salaries. So that is also important. But I think, one point which I wanted to make is that any campaign, especially a national campaign of this size and nature, will succeed only if they have the media with them. And it's very, very important for all activists who are in this field to hold hands with the media. You have to convince the media, you have to virtually seduce them into being a part of the campaign. They have to become partners to the campaign, and that is the only way it's going to succeed. We have seen what happened in polio, and polio largely succeeded because the media was so much involved in that polio campaign. Now we have the leprosy campaign also coming in, and I don't see the media there at all. And India is planning to announce on October 2nd that India has eliminated leprosy. Now we already did that in 2005, and the danger of doing that is, in India, the moment you say it has been eliminated, in the public parlance, they assume that leprosy is no more a problem. Now, elimination does not mean eradication. They are 2 different things, and I think it's for the media to explain the difference between elimination and eradication. Elimination just means that you have only 1 case per 10,000. And I think, in this whole business of announcing how well we have done, one of the dangers is, I'm not very sure personally, I'm cynical about this, that on October 2nd, whether we can actually honestly say that we have been able to do what we want to do. Whether we have actually, as a nation, we can claim ODF. And the dangers of doing that is, once you claim that, then there is no tension. Then everyone relaxes, saying, okay, we have achieved it, now we don't have to bother. But this has to be a campaign for decades to come. Because, once you say that, we have achieved this status of ODF, the years to come will be much more challenging in terms of maintaining that. It's not enough to build toilets, as we have seen in the previous, I was sitting through the previous sessions. It's not enough to just build toilets. There's so much more that needs to be done after that. And India is a very difficult country. It's one of the most interesting countries in the world as far as sociology is concerned. You see how comfortable we are with dirt. All over the country, go to any city, any village, you'll see dirt. And to bring in a complete attitudinal change to looking at dirt is a part of the sanitation campaign, and that is going to take many, many years to do. But there are very, very good examples of how, you can use the media. I want to talk about one quick example. In Kottayam district of Kerala, the district collector there wanted to announce that this is the first district in the country which has achieved 100% literacy. And he did that by using the media. He went to every newspaper, personally went to every newspaper, spoke to every editor, told them, you have to hold hands with us. You have to be a partner in this whole campaign of ensuring that Kottayam becomes 100% literate. And after that, there was a sea change in the way newspapers reported it. Every day they would write editorials. And they virtually created a halo saying that it is a shame to be illiterate. And that's how they achieved it. Now, we can do magic with the media, but we'll have to hold hands with them. We'll also have to tell them that there is money in it, for them to be seriously involved in it.
Thanks, Ram. That's quite a point,
Yeah.
So media will have to be told that it is money in the making, and then only it will do it. But beyond that, your point of Kottayam, is very well accepted, because unless until you go and convince media, unless until you go and tell media guys, media editors that there is business plus there is a story in it. More than business, I believe editors would be interested in good stories. So in that aspect, yesterday we had Mr. Sanjeev Sanyal, who is Principal Economic Advisor to the Finance Minister, and he mentioned a very interesting point. He said that, the reach of an Odisha TV channel or Odisha simple TV channel would be much more than, whole of your English medium television channel together. So, Arvind, I would like to understand from you that in terms of sanitation, shouldn't we look at more towards, bringing about awareness through regional channels or language channels, which we have seen while we were judging entries, we have seen that. Do you think that there should be a separate strategy for the local people, who are into sanitation, and teach them how to develop that strategy to, for a greater awareness of sanitation in India?
Well, certainly. I mean, if you look at, in fact, from a media point of view, in terms of just circulation and reach, I think the regional language newspapers and traditional media has a huge reach. But before I get on to that, let me just comment on one or two things which were just mentioned about 2019. The wonderful thing about our country is that every data, every achievement is a double-edged sword. However we may achieve, we should celebrate. But at the same time, it also comes on the other side of the coin. There's a lot more to be done. Okay, so whatever numbers you may give in India, there are a lot more numbers which still haven't been met. Okay, so that's a challenge I think we all need to face, and which is why I think we've just reached the first stage of building toilets. And I think, as everyone has mentioned earlier during the day, what you need is actually to reach sanitation at any level. You need the 4 steps of what I call sustainable sanitation. Build is just the first. Use, maintain, treat. I think most of that is still yet to be done. And in my view, the other three, from a communication point of view, are much tougher than the first one. The first one was just getting corporates to put in money to make toilets. The real behavior change comes now. The real behavior change to use, to maintain, and treat will happen now. And I think in this case, media's role is going to be very, very critical. At one end, I understand, I have some very close friends in media who also are responsible for business in media. And it was very interesting the other day, I won't mention, it's one of the most prominent newspaper in this country. And he said, look, my boss said, you need to have at least 40% bad news, because bad news sells. And which is why you see a lot of our, if you open the newspaper this morning, every morning, from front page onwards, it is a repressing state. Okay? You have rapes, murders, dacoities, there's scandals, etc., etc. Now, all I'm saying is somewhere that perspective of media needs to also change. Okay? They may be interesting. I mean, if bad news is required, there is enough bad news of things not being done in sanitation or any other. So can we talk about that? But coming to it, I think media, in my view, in this stage, which is the next stage of Swachh Bharat, has three roles. One, certainly to create awareness. This awareness of, if I may, as an advertising person, be graphic, what happens to your shit, right? I'm not sure people are aware what happens after, defecation takes place. The fact is that people need to be aware of what goes out comes in, and it comes in forms which are far more lethal. So that's the first. The sheer creation of awareness is very important, and there I agree. Regional publications, local media have a very critical role. They reach far and wide, and they need to do that. Number two, and I think a lot of people have talked about it during the day, I think media's role in creating demand-side pressure. We've got too used to in this country to a lot of focus on supply side, which is important. Policies and legislations, etc., are important. But let's be clear, we will not get what we want unless we ask for it, and ask for it strongly. And media can play a huge role in creating demand-side pressure. And in this case, demand-side pressure is not just individual households. It's collective pressure. Okay? And here media can play a good role. The big issue today, and especially the new media, is forming communities and collectives. So going away from traditional media, I think the ability of using media to form collective groups and communities which put demand-side pressure for those who need to deliver and hold them accountable is extremely important. And I'll make it short. The last point is media can play a huge role while exposing a lot of political issues. I think one of the underlying discussions all through the day has been, which I had mentioned in one of my questions, a big issue with a very key ingredient in this whole cycle, and the biggest impediment is local urban bodies. How local media or even national media can push and hold them responsible for delivering what they're expected to deliver, and to facilitate even private sector, which is wanting to do the job, in helping them do the job. So I think the role of media, in fact, becomes more critical now than it was in the first phase of Swachh Bharat mission.
Great, Arvind. It would be very interesting to listen to the experience of Ambika, but prior to that, I would share with all of you one example, because Arvind mentioned he talked to one of the editors and he said that 40% bad news. So with some
60% good news.
60%, but I would give you some other example. One of the very senior editors once told us in a meeting that, television TRPs are like stock market, stock exchange, BSE, NSE, So sometimes, pharma stocks would go up, sometimes retail, or sometimes, realty stocks would go up. So basically television channels need to understand whether crime would sell, whether some frivolous story would sell. So you have to behave in that manner. But 10 years or probably 12 years down the line, I asked from the same channel one of my senior colleagues, what is selling these days? And there was an interesting answer. During those days, cricket used to sell, crime used to sell, other things used to sell. And his answer was, the biggest TRP gainer today is Prime Minister Modi, which means politics. So it's interesting, Arvind. It's very interesting. So, Ambika, I will now turn to you. Your experience would be very critical because you can give us the ground level experience. So, at the ground level, how somebody like you can promote or come out with one or two, steps which can generate awareness for sanitation.
So like we've been talking, obviously media plays a very important role when it comes to spreading awareness on this issue. Like Kaveri mentioned, again, sanitation, toilets, talking about open defecation free, it was something which India as a nation has never spoken about. It's not very glamorous. So for us to actually go on ground, initially it was a joke, oh, how many toilets are made? It was actually like, oh, you're actually covering toilets. But I think we've moved on from there. So when we're talking about media creating awareness, it was initially was all about toilets, and then we've moved on a lot more on that. Again, like coming on to highlighting the good work of people, there were issues like Malegaon is a place where I'd gone to cover on ground, and that was a place which is really, it had a separate ward, diarrhea ward. And now it's obviously proved that there is a link between open defecation free and, it reduces diarrhea. So when I went there, I actually saw that how the municipality, how they worked. There was this lady commissioner, the first lady commissioner, how she settled in, how she brought about a change, with the reward, punishment. So by bringing about the change today, that Malegaon is declared open defecation free, but all those diarrhea wards are not really full. So that shows, by showing these kind of stories and sharing best practices, it does encourage a lot of other people as well. Again, coming on to the health aspect, whereas when we talk about our campaign, the Banega Swachh India campaign, initially we spoke a lot about open defecation free, waste management, fecal sludge management, how to manage different kinds of waste. Last year we moved on to actually talking about from Swachh to Swasth Bharat, when we're talking about the health angle, which is again very important. So it's important that media needs to tell people, it needs to tell the citizens that how health is actually linked to sanitation. So it's also important about the health and economic benefits. So, there are a lot of things, I think if media puts it the right way, it does come across, and I think citizens can take a lot from it.
Thanks, Ambika. And Amit, your experience of national, it's easier probably, to talk about issues like sanitation, serious issues like sanitation or education or probably other areas, which affects, people at the lower level.
So thanks, Santosh. Let me begin by saying thank you to India Sanitation Coalition and FICCI for inviting us. So I represent Doordarshan and All India Radio, which is public sector broadcaster. It is a public service broadcaster, so not necessarily driven with money, but I'm happy to share that last year we did have operational profits. But as I sit here, it almost looks like Doordarshan studios with beautiful lights, 6 cameras in front, 1 here, and the photographer clicking photos. It looks very much at home. Media certainly plays a very important role. Sanitation is also very dear to our agenda. A few things that we've done over the last few years. We have this program called Swachh Bharat. We have canned more than 350 episodes. You heard it right, more than 350 episodes of Swachh Bharat. This is half an hour program focused on different aspects of sanitation, be it ODF, ODF plus, hand washing, FSM. So all of these aspects, not necessarily limited to the capital city of Delhi, but across India. And I would urge everyone that we have put all of these episodes on YouTube. Please access those. Please watch them, download them, edit them, show it to the relevant audience. The other programs that we have done, in fact, this year itself, in January 2019, we launched 2 programs. Both of them have received very good response. One is Chalo Saaf Kare. This comes every Saturday and Sunday. Please note, every weekend, DD National, 10 p.m. This Saturday, that's day after tomorrow, on the 27th of April, we'll be showing the 24th episode of Chalo Saaf Kare. Overall, it's a 26-episode serial. It's a comedy that we have made. This is in partnership with Ministry of Drinking Water and Sanitation. Unless sanitation becomes glamorous enough for private parties to pick this up, we expect the ministries to fund it. This is what has happened with Chalo Saaf Kare. They funded it, but this is a beautiful association between user and provider. So user is MW, the Ministry of Drinking Water. So it's been a very dynamic relationship. As we produced first episode, second episode, we had the technical expertise of putting it together in a manner that people can watch it. So Chalo Saaf Kare has been given a comedy genre. This is about a village, a fictional village, where we have lead actors playing beautiful roles. So there is this protagonist called Palak, played by Rashmi Desai. Her Dadi is played by Aruna Irani, the popular actor. And there's a lot of comedy with Anita Raj, Rakesh Bedi, some of the very known faces you've seen on Doordarshan all these years. And the beautiful thing we've done is that she has the specs reminding of Mahatma Gandhi and the Swachh Bharat mission. Whenever Palak, the protagonist, puts on those specs, Mahatma Gandhi appears. So Mahatma Gandhi guides Palak what needs to be done. None other than Mahatma Gandhi guides the protagonist. And this is a beautiful comedy. You should watch it. I'm very sure you'll like it. The other program that we launched in January 2019 is where Rajiv Khandelwal is the protagonist. This is Rag Rag Mein Ganga. 21 episodes. We already telecast all of them. All episodes of Rag Rag Mein Ganga are on YouTube. Please watch it. So we have tried to connect with the youth. We can tell them more about the national river, how it originates from Gaumukh in Uttarakhand, how it is absolute pure, pristine, that you can just drink water off like this. But by the time it travels the 5 states, all of us together, how clean or dirty we make it is what we are trying to bring the consciousness. So I think that Doordarshan, being a public service broadcaster, certainly is very conscious of its mandate, and we're very happy to produce such programs. But these are the days of excessive consumerism. People may want to listen to the bad stories. It's a human behavior that bad stories sell. But I think each one of us have common sense to realize that sanitation has health benefits. Sanitation has economic benefits. It has power of gender equality. What a delight it was to listen to Rani Mistry, Namrita Kumari this morning. So I hope that we realize that sanitation is a very important subject. And we were also, I was pleasantly happy that this morning the corporates were looking at sanitation not necessarily as a vertical but as a holistic solution. So hopefully in days to come, with increased public-private participation, media will also have increased focus on sanitation sector.
Thanks, Amit. And one of the things which I would like to bring to the table, and for those who are listening also, the good part today is that online media is taking over most of the print or your television media. So online is becoming very, very important. And online media consumption is completely different. For a newspaper like Indian Express, covering stories in the print edition would be, little bit constrained, with less and less space. But in terms of taking stories on the online space of Indian Express would be much easier. I have written for both the online space and for the print space. So shouldn't we also think of creating citizen reporters, citizen media for areas or issue for bringing an awareness about issues like sanitation? That is one opportunity. And second opportunity is that why not, rather than just getting into print or looking at print or TV media, just give more and more info, more and more content to the online space so that it reaches quite fast to a larger number of audience, and also it is easier to propagate. So I would like to ask Kaveri, is this a feasible idea or should we go this path?
No, why not? I mean, if you can use WhatsApp to spread divisiveness and to spread rumors and to spread nonsense about our history and our past, I don't see why you cannot use it for something good. And in fact, I think WhatsApp is a very powerful tool, and we've already seen that India is perhaps WhatsApp's biggest market. I mean, estimates are 200 million people, but I think it's many more. And, well, everyone's always obsessed with the smartphone, and I think almost everyone has it. So I think using social media, especially WhatsApp and Facebook groups, to spread good news, and especially good news about sanitation, is one. But I want to also take this a little further and talk about two interesting things. You'd mentioned that politics and perhaps Mr. Modi are India's biggest TRP sellers currently.
That's one of the colleagues told me, and I was surprised with that.
Well, I'm not surprised, but I want to say that actually there's nothing more political than sanitation, and there's nothing more political than where our waste goes and what happens to our waste. And I think if we make that, and I found that in this general election, what was very disappointing to me was that for 5 years we've been talking about Swachh Bharat, and we've been talking about the Swachh Bharat mission and ODF, and I find it's on no MP and no MLA's agenda. And I feel that it is, of course, a failure of the media to demand that sort of accountability from our MPs and MLAs and say, okay, so what have you done with your MP Lads Fund for Swachh Bharat? What have you done what have you done in your constituency? There are some vague figures that some people have floated, but upon fact check, they were also proved to be wrong, because it would have meant, for instance, I don't want to mention the name of the candidate, but it would have meant that she would have created a toilet every minute of her term, which was a little difficult to understand. But I think the fact that we have not been able to make Swachh Bharat a political issue and actually make our MPs and our MLAs accountable for that is, I think, a big error. And I think we really need to, the next election that comes along, and it will be very soon, the next assembly or the next municipal election, I think we need to make this and I think the India Sanitation Coalition perhaps can do quite a bit towards it, is to demand accountability. So let's not talk about Swachh Bharat for 5 years and then forget it when the elections come. That's one. The second thing which I have always found, and I really want to emphasize it, I know India Sanitation Coalition does a great job, but we really have a database problem. This is something that requires participation from the public, from the private sector, from individual citizens, and we really don't have a database that gives us that whole 360-degree view of everyone who's involved in this. If someone can come forward and actually help people to put this together, I think it would be the biggest social service. It can be a digital website. It doesn't need that much of investment. But that in itself is going to be such a game changer, let me tell you. The more you see, you cannot be what you cannot see. I firmly believe that it's in every sphere of life, whether it's women leaders or whether it's civic leaders. And the more one sees of the changes and the innovations that are happening in all these areas, the better it will be for us to actually emulate them and to popularize them. So, for God's sake, let us at least have a good database that puts all the knowledge that all of us have, and all of us put together now must be having a database of millions of people who are involved in these areas. So let's do that. Let's make our politicians accountable. Let's make our leaders accountable. Let's put out a database on digitally, which is not very expensive. And let's use WhatsApp groups to maybe not float rumors and actually, spread some good news and, maybe create civic awareness. I think that would be a great start.
Arvind, what do you think about utilization of the online space, for?
In a way, in my mind, I think that is the route to go. Today, with the kind of reach a mobile phone has, or even through the mobile phone, digital media has, I think that's the way to go. Coming to another thing, which Kaveri talked about, some of the people talk about, that a lot of the large media do annual recognition and awards and whatever thorns, very greenothons and something thorns, etc. A lot of that happens. But if you've been a media person, you realize that you need multiple OTSs to get even a brand message in. To get behavior change, you almost need a reminder every day. The only media which can give you a reminder every day is your phone. Right? So I think using innovatively that medium is really the way to go forward. Now, number one. Number two, We need to understand, unlike traditional media, digital stroke mobile media is an interactive medium. You need to have conversations with your audience. It's not preaching. Over a period of time, it has to be user content, okay, which is what runs a successful digital campaign. And hence, I think the role of whether it's corporates who are involved or ISC is to create forums which are interesting, which are interactive, to be able to get this conversation going. We need to have a conversation about shit. We should all talk about it. Why can't there be Lou cafes and Lou chats? I was very interested to see the Lou Tell idea. But there should be a lot more of that to be able to have this conversation. And that conversation can also become a route, in my mind, for accountability. I can have people demanding, saying, why is the loo in this public government office which I went to so pathetic? Okay, or why that's not working, or why there's stink, or why my drains are not being cleaned. So I think the digital media stroke mobile, as I say, is the way forward. Obviously supplemented by the standing and the gravitas of the traditional media, which still exists in our country. But digital media is the way forward, absolutely.
Thanks. And I could see Ramesh nodding his head, when Arvind was speaking. So which means that at least there is a unanimity that yes, digital media is the way to go. And I would like, if you have to add something, then I have already got this ultimatum that our time is now getting over. So Ramesh, if you have to add quickly to some point, and then Amit and Ambika, you can just conclude the whole thing.
Very briefly, digital is the way forward because that is the future and we cannot run away from it. The fact is that no one reads a newspaper after 10:30 in the morning. But the digital space, those stories are there forever. And it has tremendous amount of impact. There are very good websites which have come in the recent past, good news websites, very good credibility, and they are interested in doing these kinds of stories. So we should capitalize on it, capitalize on the digital media. It's got tremendous amount of reach and it's increasing every day.
Amit?
Well, I would say that all forms of media can be used in a diverse country like India to propagate the right messages. The latest buzzword is OTT media, over-the-top media. So look at all of these programs on Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, whether it is a content on Delhi crime or some of these scripts that were never touched before. Very beautiful, sensitive subjects handled brilliantly. I think content is going to be the king. You can choose whichever media, but in a country like ours, for many who have written obituary to radio, they still love radio. And I think we were mentioning about the impact of regional intervention. This is where community radio can also be very helpful. So certainly radio, community radio, television, internet, new media, OTT media, and I don't know, tomorrow may bring some new forms of media. Everything needs to be used. Only thing is strong content, crisp, nice story, beautiful entertainment, strong messages, and I'm sure there'll be customers for it.
Great point made, Amit, because I just forgot to tell all of you about All India Radio, which is a great medium, in terms of what you were saying to be done. Ambika, your point.
Yeah, so when I agree, obviously, online does make a difference. So like even at NDTV, we have the campaign running for 5 years now, but what can go online? Everything cannot go on television. So a lot more stories, a lot goes online, that's one. Secondly, I would like to add here, even if when we're talking about smartphones with our busy lives, it's easier to target even the youngsters on it, like the Poo the Loo campaign. There's so many campaigns which we can actually see and get, it's something simple like a hand washing campaign. If it's on our phone, we can actually see it. We can tell our children that this is how you exactly, the small things which we can easily do on a phone, which we really don't have to turn on the television. Also an app like the Google app, which is something which, again with our smartphone, that's something which was a great innovation because actually you could not only use a loo, it's also about giving your feedback. So something like that where a person in India can actually find where a toilet is and give your feedback is also, I think, something which is great when we're talking about the use of digital.
It was a great discussion, but in the end I would say that again we have proved that we are true journalists. We spoke and we didn't allow you people to ask questions, but in the interest of time, I would say that that is something which we have to abide. Thank you very much, you all, for listening, and thank you. You all spoke very well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
They need a picture.
Lovely audience, we break for tea now for 10 minutes only, and then let's get back because the temperature outside is really high. Okay? Yeah. Please come back. Thank you.